In part 3 of this series, we'll explore 17 of the most common stakeholder management interview questions and answers you will be asked during your project manager interview. Each answer can be customized to highlight your unique qualifications and experiences. Before your interview, it's important to research the company and review the job description so you can incorporate key skills relevant to the job role in your answers. Question number 1. How do you identify and manage key stakeholders in a project? Hiring managers ask this to see whether you understand that strong project delivery depends on more than just timelines and tasks. They want to know if you can recognize who has influence, who is impacted, and how to keep the right people informed and aligned throughout the project. Your answer should show that you are intentional, organized, and proactive in how you build stakeholder relationships from the start. I identify key stakeholders by first looking at who will influence the project, who will be affected by the outcome, and who has decision-making authority at different stages. I do not treat all stakeholders the same because each one usually has a different level of involvement, concern, and impact on the project. Early on, I like to map them out based on influence, interest, and what they specifically need from the project so I can be more thoughtful in how I engage them. Once I identify them, I focus on building a communication approach that fits each stakeholder rather than sending the same update to everyone. For example, senior leaders may want concise progress updates and risks, while working teams may need more detailed discussions around deliverables, blockers, and next steps. I also make it a priority to understand what success looks like from each stakeholder's perspective. That helps me catch misalignment early and manage expectations before problems develop. For me, managing stakeholders well is not just about keeping people informed, it is about creating trust, maintaining alignment, and making sure the right conversations happen at the right time so the project can move forward smoothly. Question number 2. How do you handle difficult or demanding stakeholders? Hiring managers ask this to see how you maintain professionalism and control when dealing with pressure or strong personalities. They want to know if you can stay calm, set boundaries, and still keep the project moving forward. Focus on emotional control, active listening, and turning tension into alignment rather than conflict. I handle difficult stakeholders by first focusing on understanding where their concerns are coming from rather than reacting to their behavior. In one project, I worked with a stakeholder who frequently challenged timelines and pushed for additional features without considering the impact. Instead of pushing back immediately, I scheduled a one-on-one conversation to understand their priorities and what success looked like from their perspective. Once I had that clarity, I reframed our discussions around shared goals instead of opposing views. I walked them through the impact of their requests on timelines and resources in a very transparent way, using data and clear examples rather than opinions. This helped shift the conversation from emotion to logic. At the same time, I set clear expectations around what could realistically be delivered and when. I stayed consistent with communication and followed through on commitments, which helped build trust over time. Eventually, the stakeholder became more collaborative, and we were able to move forward more efficiently. I've learned that difficult stakeholders are often just highly invested, and the key is to align with their goals while maintaining structure and clarity. Question number 3. How do you communicate project updates to stakeholders? Hiring managers ask this to understand how you keep stakeholders informed without overwhelming them. They want to see that you can tailor communication, highlight what matters, and maintain transparency. Focus on clarity, consistency, and adapting your message to your audience. I communicate project updates by making sure the information is clear, relevant, and tailored to the audience. Not every stakeholder needs the same level of detail, so I adjust how I present updates depending on who I'm speaking to. For example, for senior stakeholders, I focus on high-level progress, key milestones, risks, and any decisions that need their input. For team members or more involved stakeholders, I provide more detailed updates around tasks, timelines, and dependencies. I also keep communication consistent by setting a regular cadence, whether that's weekly updates or milestone-based check-ins. In addition to meetings, I use a centralized system where stakeholders can view progress at any time, which reduces the need for constant follow-ups. If there are risks or delays, I communicate them early along with a proposed solution rather than waiting until they become bigger issues. This approach ensures that stakeholders stay informed, confident, and aligned without feeling overwhelmed by unnecessary details. Question number 4. How do you manage stakeholder expectations throughout a project? Hiring managers ask this to see if you can prevent misalignment before it becomes a problem. They want to know if you set realistic expectations and maintain them as the project evolves. Focus on clarity, consistency, and proactive communication. I manage stakeholder expectations by setting clear and realistic expectations from the very beginning of the project. This includes defining scope, timelines, deliverables, and what success looks like so there are no assumptions. As the project progresses, I make sure expectations are continuously reinforced through regular updates and transparent communication. If anything changes, whether it's a delay, risk, or shift in priorities, I address it early rather than waiting until it becomes a bigger issue. I also make it a point to confirm alignment at key stages, especially before moving into critical phases of the project. This ensures that stakeholders are still on the same page and there are no surprises later on. If expectations need to be adjusted, I clearly explain the reasoning and the impact so stakeholders can make informed decisions. By being proactive and transparent, I'm able to build trust and keep expectations aligned throughout the entire project lifecycle. Question number 5. Tell me about a time you had to deal with a challenging stakeholder. Hiring managers ask this to evaluate your real-world experience handling stakeholder challenges. They want to see how you communicate under pressure, manage conflict, and still deliver results. Focus on your approach, not just the situation. I worked on a project where a key stakeholder frequently changed requirements late in the process and was often dissatisfied with progress, even when milestones were being met. This created confusion for the team and risked delaying the project. Instead of allowing the situation to continue, I scheduled a focused discussion to better understand their concerns. It became clear that they felt disconnected from the project and didn't have enough visibility into how decisions were being made. To address this, I adjusted my approach by increasing the frequency of updates and involving them more directly in key checkpoints. I also introduced clearer documentation of requirements and decisions so there was a shared understanding moving forward. Over time, their confidence in the process improved, and the number of last-minute changes decreased significantly. The project was delivered successfully, and the working relationship became much more collaborative. This experience reinforced for me that many stakeholder challenges come from a lack of clarity or involvement, and addressing that early can make a big difference. Question number 6. How do you handle conflicting priorities between stakeholders? Hiring managers ask this to see how you navigate competing demands without losing control of the project. They want to know if you can stay neutral, align stakeholders, and make decisions that support the overall goal. Focus on clarity, prioritization, and bringing stakeholders together rather than choosing sides. I handle conflicting priorities by first understanding each stakeholder's perspective and what's driving their priorities. In one project, I had one group pushing for speed to meet a market opportunity, while another was focused on ensuring quality and minimizing risk. Both priorities were valid, but they were pulling the project in different directions. Instead of making a decision in isolation, I brought the stakeholders together and clearly outlined the project goals, constraints, and potential trade-offs. I used data to show how each option would impact timelines, quality, and overall outcomes. From there, I guided the conversation toward a solution that balanced both priorities. We agreed on a phased approach where we delivered a strong core version first, followed by enhancements. By focusing on shared outcomes rather than individual preferences, we were able to move forward with alignment and avoid ongoing conflict. It reinforced the importance of transparency and structured decision-making. Question number 7. How do you gain stakeholder buy-in at the start of a project? Hiring managers ask this to understand how you set projects up for success from the beginning. They want to see that you can align stakeholders early and reduce resistance later. Focus on involvement, clarity, and shared ownership. I gain stakeholder buy-in by involving them early in the project rather than presenting a fully formed plan after decisions have already been made. I start by having discussions to understand their goals, concerns, and what success looks like from their perspective. Once I have that input, I incorporate it into the project plan and clearly show how their priorities are reflected. This helps stakeholders feel heard and more invested in the outcome. I also make sure to clearly communicate the project objectives, scope, and expected impact so there is no ambiguity. Before moving forward, I confirm alignment to ensure everyone is on the same page. By creating a sense of shared ownership from the start, stakeholders are more engaged, supportive, and less likely to push back later in the project. Question number 8. How do you handle a stakeholder who disagrees with your approach? Hiring managers ask this to evaluate how you handle disagreement and maintain professionalism. They want to see that you can stand by your decisions while still being open to feedback. Focus on listening, reasoning, and collaboration. When a stakeholder disagrees with my approach, my first step is to understand their perspective rather than immediately defending my own. I ask questions to uncover their concerns and what they feel may be at risk. Once I have that understanding, I explain my approach clearly, including the reasoning behind it and how it aligns with project goals. I use data, past experience, or examples to support my perspective rather than relying on opinion. If their concerns are valid, I'm open to adjusting the approach or finding a middle ground that addresses both perspectives. The goal is not to win the argument, but to find the best solution for the project. By keeping the conversation focused on outcomes rather than personal opinions, I'm able to maintain a positive working relationship while ensuring the project stays on track. Question number 9. How do you ensure stakeholders remain engaged throughout the project? Hiring managers ask this to see how you maintain interest and involvement over time, especially on longer projects. They want to know if you can keep stakeholders informed without overwhelming them. Focus on consistency, relevance, and value. I ensure stakeholders remain engaged by making communication consistent, relevant, and purposeful. I establish a regular update cadence so stakeholders know when to expect information, which helps maintain structure and trust. I also tailor updates so they focus on what matters most to each stakeholder. Instead of sharing everything, I highlight progress, key milestones, risks, and decisions that require their input. This keeps communication efficient and meaningful. In addition to regular updates, I involve stakeholders at key moments where their feedback or approval is needed. This helps them feel connected to the project rather than just receiving updates passively. By keeping communication focused and involving stakeholders at the right times, I'm able to maintain engagement and ensure ongoing alignment throughout the project. Question number 10. How do you manage last-minute requests from stakeholders? Hiring managers ask this to see how you handle pressure without losing control of scope, timelines, or team focus. They want to know if you can stay flexible while still protecting the integrity of the project. Focus on evaluation, communication, and structured decision-making. I manage last-minute requests by first understanding the reason behind the request and how critical it is to the project's overall success. Not all requests carry the same level of importance, so I take a moment to assess the impact before taking action. Once I understand the request, I evaluate how it affects scope, timeline, and resources. I then communicate those impacts clearly to the stakeholder so they can make an informed decision. If the request is essential, I adjust the plan accordingly and ensure the team is aligned on the changes. If it's not critical, I document it for a future phase rather than allowing it to disrupt current progress. This helps maintain focus and avoid unnecessary delays. By staying structured and transparent, I'm able to handle last-minute requests without compromising the overall success of the project. Question number 11. How do you handle a stakeholder who is not responsive? Hiring managers ask this to understand how you deal with lack of engagement, which can delay projects. They want to see persistence, initiative, and problem-solving. Focus on follow-up, alternative approaches, and maintaining momentum. When a stakeholder is not responsive, I first make sure I've communicated clearly and through the right channels. Sometimes delays come from unclear expectations or communication overload, so I simplify my message and highlight exactly what is needed and by when. If there's still no response, I follow up with a more direct approach, such as scheduling a quick meeting or reaching out through a different channel. I also explain the impact of the delay so they understand why their input is important. If the issue continues, I look for ways to move forward without blocking the entire project, such as making temporary decisions based on available information while keeping stakeholders informed. In situations where it becomes critical, I escalate appropriately while maintaining professionalism. This approach allows me to keep the project moving while still encouraging stakeholder engagement. Question number 12. How do you balance stakeholder needs with project constraints? Hiring managers ask this to see how you handle trade-offs between expectations and reality. They want to know if you can manage pressure while staying realistic about what can be delivered. Focus on prioritization, communication, and alignment. I balance stakeholder needs with project constraints by first clearly understanding both sides, the expectations stakeholders have and the limitations around time, resources, and scope. This allows me to identify where adjustments can realistically be made. When there is a gap between what stakeholders want and what is feasible, I focus on prioritization. I work with them to identify what is most critical to achieving the project's goals and where flexibility exists. I also communicate constraints clearly and early so there are no surprises later on. Rather than just saying something can't be done, I offer alternative solutions or phased approaches that still move the project forward. By being transparent and solution-focused, I'm able to balance expectations with reality while maintaining trust and keeping the project on track. Question number 13. How do you build strong relationships with stakeholders? Hiring managers ask this to understand how you create trust and long-term collaboration. They want to see that you go beyond just managing tasks and focus on building connections. Emphasize consistency, reliability, and understanding stakeholder needs. I build strong relationships with stakeholders by focusing on trust, consistency, and clear communication. From the beginning, I take time to understand their goals, concerns, and what success looks like from their perspective. I make it a priority to communicate regularly and follow through on commitments. Even small actions, like providing timely updates or addressing concerns quickly, help build credibility over time. I also aim to be approachable and open to feedback so stakeholders feel comfortable sharing their thoughts or raising concerns early. This helps prevent issues from escalating. Over time, this consistent and reliable approach strengthens relationships and makes collaboration more effective. I've found that when stakeholders trust you, projects run more smoothly because there's less friction and more alignment. Question number 14. How do you handle escalations from stakeholders? Hiring managers ask this to see how you respond under pressure when issues are raised at a higher level. They want to know if you can stay composed, take ownership, and resolve problems without making the situation worse. Focus on calmness, accountability, and solution-oriented thinking. I handle escalations by first staying calm and focusing on understanding the issue clearly rather than reacting emotionally. When a stakeholder escalates something, it usually means expectations were not met or communication broke down somewhere along the way. My first step is to gather all the relevant information so I have a complete view of the situation. I then acknowledge the concern and take ownership of addressing it, even if multiple teams are involved. I believe it's important to show accountability and not shift blame. From there, I focus on resolving the issue as quickly as possible by working with the team to identify a solution. I also communicate transparently with the stakeholder about what actions are being taken and what the expected outcome will be. After resolving the issue, I reflect on what caused the escalation and put measures in place to prevent it from happening again. This helps strengthen trust and improve future project execution. Question number 15. How do you ensure stakeholder satisfaction at the end of a project? Hiring managers ask this to see if you think beyond delivery and focus on overall experience and value. They want to know if you actively confirm that expectations were met and relationships remain strong. Focus on validation, communication, and follow-through. I ensure stakeholder satisfaction by first making sure that all agreed-upon deliverables have been completed and meet the defined success criteria. Before officially closing the project, I review the outcomes with stakeholders to confirm that expectations have been met. I also take time to gather feedback on both the final deliverable and the overall process. This helps me understand what worked well and where improvements can be made for future projects. If there are any outstanding concerns or minor adjustments needed, I address them promptly so stakeholders feel fully supported. I also ensure there is a clear handoff, including documentation and any necessary training, so they feel confident moving forward. By closing the loop and confirming satisfaction, I not only complete the project successfully, but also strengthen the relationship for future collaboration. Question number 16. How do you manage stakeholders with limited availability or time constraints? Hiring managers ask this to see how you work with busy stakeholders without slowing down the project. They want to know if you can communicate efficiently and still get the input you need. Focus on efficiency, clarity, and adaptability. I manage stakeholders with limited availability by making communication as efficient and focused as possible. I respect their time by providing concise updates that highlight only what's most important, such as key decisions, risks, or approvals needed. When I need input, I make sure my requests are clear and specific so they can respond quickly without needing additional clarification. I also try to anticipate their needs in advance so I can combine multiple topics into a single interaction rather than reaching out repeatedly. If scheduling meetings is difficult, I use alternative methods like summarized emails or shared documents where they can review and provide input at their convenience. By being mindful of their time and keeping communication streamlined, I'm able to maintain their involvement without creating unnecessary delays in the project. And finally, here's the last project manager stakeholder management interview question, question number 17. How do you handle misalignment between stakeholders on project goals? Hiring managers ask this to evaluate how you handle strategic disagreements that can impact the direction of a project. They want to see if you can bring clarity and alignment without creating conflict. Focus on facilitation, communication, and shared objectives. When there is misalignment between stakeholders on project goals, my first step is to clearly understand each perspective and what's driving their position. Often, the disagreement comes from different priorities rather than opposing intentions. I then bring stakeholders together to openly discuss their views in a structured way. I focus the conversation on the overall objectives of the project and how each perspective contributes to those goals. To move forward, I help identify common ground and highlight the impact of different options so stakeholders can make informed decisions. If needed, I guide the group toward a solution that best supports the project's success, even if it requires compromise. By facilitating open and focused discussions, I'm able to turn misalignment into alignment and ensure the project moves forward with clarity and shared understanding. If you want to learn more on how to land jobs and reach your career goals, don't forget to hit that subscribe and bell notification button to get new videos every single week. Also, don't forget to hit that like button because that motivates me to keep doing what I do. Stay safe, keep smiling, and good luck.